Okay, stand by.
Oh, I know.
Inspiration, brave action, and heartwarming journeys. This is what the Louise H. Reed Show brings you. Now, here's your host, Louise H. Reed.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me once again this wonderful Tuesday. I'm your host, Louise H. Reed. With listeners in over 145 countries and millions of iTunes downloads and ongoing podcasts, I'm the fortunate one here every Tuesday live at this time to talk life and leadership and the journey of it all with everyday people doing extraordinary things. People who take brave, bold action in pursuit of their dreams and goals and are here to share their journey to help you do the same in yours. There is nothing more valuable than time, as I say every week. And so thank you for sharing yours with me. As a way of showing my gratitude to each of you for listening every week, anyone who comments on a podcast episode with the hashtag Ladyboss Loyalty will automatically be entered into a draw to win exclusive Ladyboss Loyalty swag. I think I only have about 4 or 5 left of the current exclusive swag, and I'm going to be switching things up shortly. So if you want your hands on the latest one, please comment away and we'll see who's next. I'll be drawing a next winner in the next couple of weeks. So today we're switching things up a little bit on the show. It's a bit of a surprise episode. Those of you who listen regularly have heard me say life is live. I love my live radio show because I think it's a perfect example of what we have to do in our everyday life. We've got to roll with the bumps that come our way, and some of the obstacles are easily surmountable, some of them not so much. Anyway, today there was an unexpected turn of events with my guest. And so along with this Life is Live thing, I got to roll with it. I'm expected here live. So in chatting with my one and only Mr. Jay Andrews, he decided or thought he would throw out the suggestion of flipping the tables. So today on the show, I have my lovely Jay with me, and those watching live on Facebook or through the recording on YouTube will see Jay joining me.
Good morning, everyone. Surprise.
Here we are. And so, yeah, so Jay is the role of interviewer today. I'm feeling a bit nervous because now I feel like I'm on the spot.
So for all of you in the past have said, I want to know these things about Louise. And I'm like, I can't say anything. You're going to have to ask her. Well, here's to you. This is the opportunity that we've all been waiting for. We're going to find out about Louise.
Here we go. I'm nervous.
So thanks again, everyone, for tuning into Louise's show. This is quite the honor to be in your shoes for a change. I will do my best. I will say right now that I am definitely not as good as an interviewee to Louise. She is so good with her guests and makes everyone feel so comfortable in their skin and just like sitting around having coffee. But enough of that. Let's just dive right in, as Louise always says, and jump in. So the one question, because I listen to your show all the time.
He does. He listens every week live. It's just like the best thing ever.
And so lately, you have been saying to people, let's roll back the clock, shall we? So let's roll back the clock to little Louise. Yes. And you know what, folks? This is going to be great because I'm going to probably start learning some things today as well. So let's look back at little Louise. What did little Louise want to be?
Well, Jay knows the answer to this question, and it actually is going to maybe bring tears to my eyes. So when I was a little girl, the thing I wanted to be most in this world was a mum. I had very, very supportive parents, both of whom have been on the show, guests on my show. And I know regular listeners have enjoyed listening to both my mum and my dad share some of their stories. And so they had great expectations of me and high expectations and thought I could do wonderful things in this world. So pushed me hard, and I, went to university, did all the stuff. But I still, despite that, my thing was I want to be a real mom like my mom.
As opposed to all of us out there had fake moms. No, I'm just teasing.
But when people asked, that's what I would say. I would say I want to be a real mom like my mom.
Right. And actually, that's very admirable. I know that when we're children, I mean, who do we look up to, right? I mean, we like to think it is our parents. It is, could be a sibling, whatever. But I do find that very admirable that you brought up that it was your mom. So let's stick with mom for a second, all right?
Yeah.
And mom, if you're listening, hi, mom.
Hi, mama.
So what is it about your mom? Like you said, I wanted to be a mom, but there had to be something about your mother that is what you wanted. Like it could be the way she viewed things, could have been the way she
I can answer.
Okay.
I don't need some prompting, but thank you. I know we're getting all sorts of insights into me today. It is my show.
I'm just going to quietly sit here and drink coffee.
No, it's a really good question. I probably would have answered it very differently throughout the years. Like as a young Louise, I would have seen something very different than what I would say now. So as a little Louise, I just saw someone who, in my mind at that time, could do no wrong, who was kind and loving and very grounded. Obviously, I wouldn't have used that word, grounded. She was just someone you could always count on.
Because if you did use the word grounded, it means you were in big trouble.
I didn't get in trouble.
Of course not.
I didn't. And so now as an adult, sort of reflecting on what was my story around what did a real mom mean, and I've had to do a bit of that exploring based on some recent events in our own life recently, which we may or may not get into. I was doing some journaling on that. What does a real mom like my mom actually mean to me? And it was about still those things, that groundedness, that soft place to land. That was a big thing for me, was that soft place to land, that no matter what happened, there was always something that you could figure out. And my mom, not only was she always really present with us as kids, she had big goals in this world and she achieved them. But it was always really clear that family was first. And I never felt ever that despite her great success in her education and in her career, I never felt that we ever took a backseat. So how I admired, again, so this is old Louise now. Well, I'm not old, but 44-year-old Louise.
Older
and wiser. I think that's what it is that there was an elegance and a grace with which she managed all of that and seemed so happy in her, and was and is happy with all of her successes.
Sounds to me that she was quite balanced in the sense that family and career, it was very balanced. Where we see today, there's such an imbalance happening out there where one usually takes over the other, whether things are going on in someone's personal life or their family, just weighs more heavily on their day-to-day I don't want to use the word activities, but with their day-to-day lives, that is prominent, or work becomes the most prominent thing, and the other one suffers. But just as you were talking, and I know your mom, she is well balanced. What do you think? Now, I want to actually go down this path.
Sure.
Okay. So what is your thoughts on twofold? One, why aren't there more balanced, we'll use women because you're referring to your mom. Why are there not enough balanced women out there? And second of all, is it because of society or is it because of priority?
So the first question, and I might forget the second one by the time I finish the first, why aren't there more balanced women, you're asking? Yeah. So I, first of all, don't agree that balance exists. And I just want to take a moment and step back and say, I don't think my mom had balance.
But gave the impression.
I'm kind of going to be answering your two questions in one, I think, because what I saw and have reflected upon is that she actually did prioritize them. She didn't balance them. There was a period of time where there was balance, but she had children younger than was the plan. And so she and my dad they together decided that they were prioritizing, my mom was going to be prioritizing family over work. And so I think that the difficulty here, I think now there's this expectation that women should be going for it all at the same time. And that's where I think that individual women we're doing ourselves a disservice, and we're doing other women a disservice and judging them for their choices. And then society's expectations layered on top of that. I don't know. And then and I joke about it too, as I've got my Wonder Woman mug. We joke about, and actually not joke about, we put women on a pedestal. Oh, you're a superhero. I don't know. A superwoman. I don't know. A Wonder Woman. I don't know how you do it. And so we've now adopted this busyness badge of honor, which is doing women a complete disservice.
And I believe, we all sticking with the gender of women, but it falls, and it hate to break the news out there, any men listening to right now, but it's not just a female thing, it is a male thing as well. This thing that you need to be the breadwinner, but you need to be showing up as a father, and you need to be having those emotional conversations. And they're like, well, men don't talk about that. Newsflash, men do actually talk about emotions. I will be one of those people. I do. So I just think it's very interesting that you.
It is. And so I want to just explore what you were just talking about, though, and I'm going to try not to turn the tables because
You can't interview me. I'm interviewing you. All right, go ahead.
You were talking about men and emotions, and you said newsflash, men do talk about their emotions, but I think there are some like you. But I think we have socialized boys and men to not. And so there are some who are connected with that part of themselves. But now I feel like society is saying, okay, men, speak up. And then these poor sods don't know how to access that. So I do talk a lot about women. And it's mainly because, well, there's a lot of reasons. Because women certainly are underrepresented in the workforce, and I'm passionate about women rising in the leadership ranks because it helps everyone. It makes better businesses, it creates better families, and it creates better communities. But also because I'm a woman and I'm having a female experience, so I feel like I can speak to that more readily. And this is why I think when you and I have these types of conversations, it's quite interesting because we both have a level of empathy for the other experience or others, because it's more than just two experiences.
Right.
Yeah, that's all I have to say on that.
No, and so I'll bridge it over to, so you were talking about kind of like, not your why, but what your, I guess, vision is. So let's bring in the why question, because everyone always says, what is your why? Or the elevator speech. You've got 2 minutes to tell me what you do with your life. And which, by the way, people, don't even get me on this tangent, but the elevator speech, let's just say Jay's not necessarily a big fan of the elevator speech, but that's a whole other story. Should I ever get interviewed? But anyways, but I would like to go back to your why. So what is Louise's why?
Quite simply, I'll simply state it, it's to awaken women and workplaces.
So could you go one layer past that, please? You sound like the kids. So how was school today? Great. Can we go just a little bigger than great, please? All right, go ahead.
So I do that through, I guess if you want to throw some titles to that, I really do that through two main ways. One is through coaching women, and the goal there, or the purpose there, is to awaken within them their own clarity and ability to take brave, bold action in pursuit of their dreams and goals. So whether that is their own business, whether that is climbing the quote-unquote corporate ladder, whatever that looks like for them, it's living their best life, and brave, bold action is where it starts. Okay. And then in terms of the workplaces, what hurt my heart in my 20 years of working in corporate was seeing leaders sort of stuck in the middle. I saw leaders desperately wanting to do the right thing for their people, but sort of getting sandwiched between executives getting sandwiched between the board and their employees. There's always a layer above you. You've always got a boss. And those individuals struggling with how to really make a difference in the lives of their employees and still drive business results. So I do leadership consulting on leading with head and heart.
Okay, so you're saying leading with head and heart. So can you now peel back another layer and go into just, because I think people are sitting there going head and heart. Okay, that sounds great. And I probably have a theory of what that is if you're sitting at home listening to this in your car, in your office when you're supposed to be working. But you know what? I'm patting you on the back. You are working. You're engaging and learning something new. But I would like to know more on what you just said about head and heart.
So another sort of high level statement is about looking at profits and people.
Okay.
And so we don't need to do a lot of Googling or looking through the business section of newspapers to see that it's all about profits. And yet with rising rates of employee disengagement, employee illness, disability rates going up, a mental health crisis, an obesity epidemic, sleeplessness, and people not getting enough sleep. And doing lots of reading and research on that too. It's a bit of a crisis. And in my opinion, it's up to leaders to do something about this. And so I'm writing a book, which is going to address this. And so it is a leadership book, unlike others, because it really does combine science and soul.
So let me ask you this. We hear this term all the time, hustle, the hustle, the hustle, the hustle. So what is your stance or thoughts on the hustle? Because I think it would bleed into head and heart. Because if you are here, let's really kind of laser point it. You're a woman, you are considered a leader, you have people underneath you, whether it's your own business or inside of a corporation. But this need or this thought that is around us that you need to constantly keep going, because when you're sleeping, someone else is out there working it and doing whatever. So this hustle, what is your stance or what is your viewpoint on it?
The hustle, I liken that to the busyness syndrome. I think, did I mention that already? Busyness?
The badge of honor. The
busyness badge of honor. It's actually got a label, like many things do. It's the busyness syndrome. And it's the constantly putting out fires. And I saw in that, everyone knows what a hustle feels like. You're in that elevated state of, I've got to check the boxes, I've got to get all this stuff done. And then once this is done, this is what comes next. That's the hustle. It's that feeling of stretching, striving, grabbing, grasping. It's a feeling of tension, of tightness. I can almost feel the tension and tightness in my voice. That's the hustle. And we know what happens to the brain when you're hustling like that. This is the science piece in me. You do not make good decisions that way. Your body's getting ready to fight or to flee.
So if there is all this scientific evidence of the negative side to this, why is it then we are being told by people out there that are inspiring us and we look up to them and their thought, whether male or female, they're these great leaders, thought leaders. Why are they all saying, yes, you have to do the hustle? Why is that if we have scientific proof that we shouldn't be?
Because oftentimes it's that scientific proof. It doesn't make you drop dead the next day.
Right.
Fair. It's the longer term impact. So this is where leaders are going to have to be brave. Leaders are going to have to take some courageous action if they want sustainable businesses. And that's not just, they want sustainable businesses with a few changes that are happening all kind of at the same time from a societal point of view, which is really fascinating to me. So we've got movements like the Me Too movement. We've got the Black Lives Matter movement. We have some interesting political things going on in the United States and then elsewhere around the world. We've got fires in the Amazon. I think that it's going to take a different kind of leader to say, we need to pause for a second. Because we keep going at this rate. I've said it to you, Jay, many times over the years that we've known one another. We are actually killing ourselves. We're killing our planet and we're killing ourselves. So it's going to start taking a different kind of leader, which is also why I'm really passionate about women rising in the workforce, because typically, and we're generalizing here, and I might ruffle some feathers in saying this, but our brains are wired differently.
I don't think you're ruffling feathers.
Well, it's an uncomfortable thing for people to talk about. We don't like to talk about gender differences because there's fear associated. There's fear associated with putting people in a box, because we do recognize that gender isn't actually just about male and female. We're really learning and exploring and uncovering that it's more of a continuum. We also don't like to use it as a way that could create stereotypes or discrimination. So we step back from that. And as a result, I don't think we do a service to either men or women.
Okay.
I don't remember where I was going with this. What was the original question?
No, I was following you. I was like, it was like kind of saying, I know where we're going, follow my directions. And I'm like, all right, this is great. Or you're in the car and you're chatting with somebody and you're like, oh my God, did we just miss the exit? You know?
And speaking of which, you should know better than to follow me when I'm driving the car and just trust that I'm going to end up in the right destination.
Oh yeah, we won't go there. But yes, let's just, if I have to shorten it, do not trust Louise in a car with directions.
No.
But okay, I want to stick with this thing about leaders, okay? So quick and to the point, what is your definition of a leader?
I know.
For those people who are saying, what's with all that dead space? I guess it would become a meme, you know, when you just drop the mic and walk away. I just did that. So, no, but in all fairness, because you're just talking about this leadership book, you're talking about head and heart. You're talking, you keep dropping the word leader. I've heard it probably 4 or 5 times right now. So for me now, what is your definition of a leader?
Definition of a leader, and this might change. It changes somewhat depending on the conversation that I'm having. I've not really found I'm still trying to find, to be honest, like the right words that really resonate with me. But essentially, it's kind of going back to what I was saying at the beginning of our conversation about leadership. And it's an individual who leads with head and heart to balance profits and people. Because there are times where it does have to be about the profits. There will be times where we have to over-rotate and it's all about the people. For instance, I unfortunately have been part of a number of large and small tech companies that have gone bankrupt. Some famous ones here in Ottawa, Canada, specifically Nortel.
Huge.
And one of the awful things about being in HR, the worst thing about being in HR, is when you have to let someone go, and layoffs are terrible. I do have some bad dreams from time to time still about a lot of those conversations and meetings I was part of. So stay with me here, because this is about head and heart, balancing profits and people. So this is an example of you absolutely, when we're talking about a company that may be going under or is in severe financial crisis, there have to be some hard decisions made around headcount, let's say. And so that's profit. That's numbers driven. That is purely based on bottom line. Mm-hmm. So through that kind of conversation, it's really about the numbers. But where it flips to people, or where it flips more than to the heart, is who is impacted and how do we tell people? I tell you, it's not the way that was done at Nortel, where people were sent an email, told to go to 2 different rooms. One room you were safe, one room you were let go. Do you know what that was like for people walking to the boardroom, wondering which boardroom am I going to? It's like walking on a plank on a boat.
Yeah, when you're talking like that, the first thing I think is humanizing leadership. We're human. Well,
that's the name of my book. Thanks for putting that out there.
Oh, I apologize. I just know, but I'm just
sorry, Joanna, if you're listening. I wasn't supposed to do that.
I'm just saying that it's just anyways. I just thinking that, and I'll use the platform of LinkedIn. People just thought it was a piece of paper with your resume on it and what you've done. And maybe 15 years ago, that platform could have looked like that. But if you look at what it is now, there's a heartbeat. There's actual breath it's living, it's breathing. Sure, there are aspects of it that is still of the old, but there is a new way of looking at engaging at work.
Engaging with the content and the people who are on
right.
that.
And I just think that this is wonderful to hear about leadership in your viewpoint of it, because the way things have been doesn't necessarily, it may have worked at the time, but it's not necessarily working at a 100% rate currently.
No, I mean, with this busyness syndrome that I'm talking about, there's tons of data that shows that productivity is down, stress is up, and engagement is lower. So, and in some work that I do with one particular company right now, some consulting that I do with an executive team, these people already know about taking action and getting results. That's how they got to the executive positions that they're in. What they need support with is how to survive in the busyness of it all, how to slow down, but not so much that they can't achieve all the things, but how can they slow down to make better decisions? How can they slow down just to gain a little bit of sanity? And how can they slow down to embrace and invite their team members to do some of the same while not having an impact on bottom line? And it is possible, but to your point, it takes a different kind of thinking.
Right. So in that being said, I'm going to kind of shift the car a little bit here.
Okay, because I could talk about this all day.
And I think it's and I think leadership is such a strong topic, and it relates to on every level. Could relate at home, sports, work, it's all over the place. But with all this form of leadership and what you're teaching women and helping them awake in the workplace and in their lives, what advice would you give one of them, say, who needs mentorship, or like, I want to, because there's a lot of things you just thrown out there, but what advice would you give someone?
Sorry, to who?
To I can say men and women, but let's just keep it on gearing it to say women. What is the advice you can give them to say, so they're listening to, like, oh yeah, Louise is right about this and that, but I'm not sure. What advice could you give them to get them over that hump to say, you know what, this is a mentor that I would like to follow, or this is a coach that I need to talk to, or what have you?
So if I understand your question correctly, I always start with getting centered and grounded first.
Yep. Okay.
Everything always comes back to the inner stuff. There's a quote that I love, is happiness is an inside job. And after searching for happiness outside of myself through education, through kids, through jobs, through houses, through cars, and having that awakening myself and realizing, oh my gosh, of course, happiness is not out there. Happiness is in here. That's where this kind of questioning always starts. If anyone is ever at a crossroads, even a positive crossroads, you pause and you look inwards. And it's pretty simple. The stuff is pretty simple. Yet, because we often don't look at ourselves this way, I don't think the answers come necessarily with ease. They didn't for me.
Okay. So on the heels of that, you've done the inner looking, correct?
Yeah.
So what lesson has Louise learned from inner looking that has moved you forward? Because it sounds like in the past, that's not what not picking on you. I was the same way. We just weren't thinking that way. It was exterior things that would evoke the change or do what we needed to do, when now we realize it's an inside job first, and then you can start taking priority in things. So that being said, what have you learned from doing the inner?
You just answered it. No, really, it is that that you can have really, it's a balance. Here I'm talking about balance again, but a balance between having really big goals, taking the right action, and then trusting that along the way, other people might come into your path, or other opportunities might come into your path that actually might be better. And so that's where it always comes back to the inner stuff. I always ask myself when I'm presented with an opportunity, and this was the same way that I actually got the radio show, right? Anytime I'm presented with an opportunity, hey, Louise, how about hosting your own radio show? I ask myself the question, is this going to take me closer to or further away from my values, my definition of success, and my goals? So I'm always really, really clear on my values and my definition of success.
Which are?
My values are family and freedom. A lot of people will say, oh, yeah, of course family is. It's not so much about what the label is. It's about then, well, okay, what does that look like and what does that mean for you? And that rolls nicely into my definition of success, which is not a nice, clean definition either. Because that changes through your life. Right now, my definition of success involves helping women in workplaces. And I'm working with the women in the workplaces who are aligned with me. I get to choose who I work with, when I work with them, and choose the people that I know that I can really support and move forward. So that's about that. So that's about the freedom piece. The family piece is about being here at home when our boys leave for school in the morning, and I'm here at home when the boys are home at the end of the day. That is massive for me. And that actually probably ties into what my definition of being a real mom like my mom. It is so core to me, the value of presence.
So and I agree with everything you're saying. I think it's vitally important to not only preach what you're saying, but actually follow through with what you're saying, and which you do. But what advice or what would you say to people who say are stumbling with this, like that are like, well, I'm going in with best intentions. I want to be doing this, and then A or B is not happening. So what advice, because you are actually literally doing what you're saying. You're like, I'm following through with my definition of family is, and I'm breathing it and doing it every single day. So, but there are people out there that are like, well, that's great. I am doing that, but there's always an obstacle or something is coming up, and I can't figure out why this is happening to me. What advice would you give them?
I think it's not easy. First of all, I think that it's easy for us to look at others and think that it's coming with ease for others. And no doubt, there'll be some people it does come easily too, but most of us it doesn't. It's about taking little steps every single day, consistently taking little steps. I talk about taking brave, bold action. Usually, brave, bold action is not a massive step. It's not a one-time thing. It's consistently showing up every day, even when it's hard, because you're so committed to your values or what it is that you believe in, and that sometimes it means that it's harder for you in your life at that time.
Yeah.
And so I think the advice here is really, if that is so important to you, know that it's worth it and to keep going. And that sometimes you have to, life is not, and work, it's not a ladder. It's like a jungle gym.
It's a good analogy.
So we talk about, I feel like I'm taking 2 steps back. Well, okay, yeah, maybe, but maybe that's because you're supposed to be going on in a different direction, and then you're going to start running that super fast. I think that we are so focused on achieving a certain outcome, mm-hmm. instead of doing a certain thing instead of being a certain way.
So what's more important, being or doing?
It's both, but for me, it's who do I want to be, because then that defines the action.
Okay.
When you know who you want to be, and you're confident in who you are, it's kind of like the second bucket of stuff that I work a lot with women on.
Right.
Is confidence. Then the action happens. But we in our society are all action takers, so we don't do the inner stuff. We don't work on confidence, and we just start doing the things and wonder why we're not getting the success that we want. It's not really that shocking when we just pause for a moment and kind of look at why. Why do you laugh?
I just think, because it's true, right? It's like people expect, like, if I read this book, if I take this course, then therefore this will come. And when it doesn't, you're like, what the hell is going on? Why didn't this not work?
And sometimes, what did I do wrong?
Right. But then my theory has always been, it's like, you keep doing it. And if it doesn't work, do something else. And if it doesn't work, do something else. And you keep doing it until you figure out what it is that you're supposed to be doing. And I don't care how many books you read. I don't care how many speakers you listen to or all these things. Like you said, it's an inside job, and you've got to, they can inspire you, and they can, those days when you're laying in bed and you're not sure, and then you remember something what someone said, and you're like, oh, all right, and then I'm ready to go, and you get up and you start moving. But again, and you refer to it quite well, it's definitely an inside job. All right. I'm just.
What's next, Mr. Interviewer?
Well, I'm just trying to think. All right. So you have this, everyone knows you as a podcaster, and everyone knows that you're helping women, but what else does Louise do? What else are you doing to make a difference?
I am a coach.
Which, yes, I know that, but what?
Well, you do. So, sorry, repeat the question.
So
you said I was a podcaster and a coach. What else am I doing to help people?
But what else are you doing out there? What else do people not know, that some things that you are doing out there?
So I think I just touched on the leadership consulting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a massive passion of mine, because the two things that hurt my heart are seeing women walking on the treadmill of life, like Groundhog Day, for those who may have seen that movie. Like, that hurts my heart. And then the others are seeing hurting leaders and hurting companies. So outside of that, you mean?
Yes.
What else do I do?
I can answer this question, people. This is, talk about a deer caught in the headlights here. So for anyone out there has ever seen Louise speak, it is absolutely incredible.
Oh, yes.
And so, which I think is hilarious, because she is a professional international speaker and goes and speaks at events, and women are approaching her and they're like, oh my God, Louise, and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, so then when I ask her the straight question, she's like, huh? So I would like you to actually talk a little bit more about your speaking, and maybe even touch upon some of the topics you talk about. I mean, I think it's interesting because we have all been those people in the audience who have wanted to hear something and walk away with something. So please share with your audience some of the things you talk about, Miss Professional International Speaker.
Oh, thank you. The short answer is all sorts. I have quite a number of passions, and with 20 years experience in HR and a variety of aspects of that, I've sort of honed speaking on a variety of topics. One of them, the bucket is gender equity, but it's about women leading as women. So
let's touch. Okay, so I'm going to open Pandora's box here.
All right.
And let's talk about this equity that you're referring to. So what are you talking about? Because that's very general. That's, you're painting with a big fat paintbrush and you're like right across. So I would actually like to hear more of what you're saying.
So it's about leveling the playing field. And this speaks more to the leadership work that I do as well, and talks that I do with groups on leveling the playing field. I think we've been talking about this, or I know we've been talking about this topic for many years, and the research is dismal in terms of the impact that we've actually been making. And so I love to talk with other groups of leaders, so at conferences or in various other types of events, about why it hasn't been working and what we need to do differently.
So what my question is to you then, what should businesses be doing differently to change the new landscape that has the potential to be out there?
There's lots of big and little things that organizations can do. And I'm particularly interested as well in being able to share with leaders what things that they can do, because when I was talking a moment ago about it hurts my heart when I see leaders wanting to do good things, but feeling sort of stuck in the middle, I think leaders are really lacking a lot of the confidence and the tools to do something differently in their own span of control. So if we're looking at organizationally, there are things that we can do, like doing employment equity audits, gender equity audits, to look at the percentage of women that we have at different levels of the organization. There are things like looking at how we screen resumes. It is known that 2 identical resumes, one with a male name and one with a female name, if that's stereotypically known as female and one that's stereotypically known as the opposite gender, that the male candidate will get callbacks significantly more frequently than the female candidate, even though everything else is identical on the resume. And so that's a problem. And that can only be solved organizationally. And the good news that's coming out in the latest research is that, thankfully, for the most part, people aren't doing this with intention. We aren't knowingly doing this.
Unconscious bias.
It's unconscious bias. But all of the years of unconscious bias training has actually been to a detriment, which is also interesting. So we're learning a lot about what's been going on the last 40 and 50 years. And thankfully, there are many organizations now engaging in this type of research so that we can have data to give leaders that's meaningful and tangible. So to give the reason, like the ROI on why you not only do you have to do it because it makes business sense, but how we're hurting as an organization as well. So some more tangible things, I suppose, that an individual leader can do. There's something that I learned this term from Joanne Lippman, who wrote a really awesome book. The book is called That's What She Said, What Men Need to Know and Women Need to Tell Them About Working Together. And she was actually on the show. She talks about interrupting the interrupters. So apparently women are interrupted, I think 2 times, I believe the stats are 2 times more often than men are in meetings. And so what we can all do differently, not just leaders, but what we all can do differently is interrupt the interrupter. So to be honest, whether it's a man or a woman that's being interrupted, we can just actually say something like, oh, that's an awesome or an interesting point I hear you bringing up, Jay, but I'd really like to hear what else Louise had to say. Or if Louise was Jim, that's a really interesting point, Jay, but I'd really be interested in hearing what Jim has to say. So you don't have to be putting on these big stance of, okay, we're going to elevate women in the workplace, and you wonder how that's going to impact you. I really liked that example. We also know that when women have male sponsors, that they do better as well. So that if we're working at the same workplace, is that you can actually say, when you're in another type of meeting, or when we're talking about promotions, women are typically overlooked more often than men. And so when you as a leader know that, it means then you might look differently at your own the individuals that you have as potential successors, and you might be bringing someone forward that you may otherwise have overlooked, or you might just be saying, hey, have you heard what Sally has been doing?
Right.
And only when it's justified. We're not looking at trying to bring women up the ranks who aren't qualified. In fact, they're typically more qualified than the men because they're having to work doubly hard. I say doubly, that's not statistically proven, but they're working extra hard in order to get
well, they're already a step behind. You just using the resume example, right? They're already a step behind.
And then if you throw Black women or visible minorities on top of being a woman, or you throw then on being part of the LGBTQ plus community, their statistics are even more staggering. So it is a real problem that organizations have to really pull their head out of the sand and make it a business priority. It's not an HR priority, right? It's a business priority because bottom line is being impacted.
I think it's a society responsibility. I think there's been this notion of, well, it's just the way it is. Well, who says it has to be that way? And then the constant answer is, well, that's what they say. Well, who in the heck are they? And anyways, you can go down the rabbit hole forever on that. I'm going to loosen things up a little bit.
I was going to say, this is not like my typical podcast.
Sorry, folks. But, there's more to Jay than just, whatever. But anyways, let's loosen up. So tell me some fun facts about Louise that a lot of people do not know. And go.
I love chocolate.
No, we know that. Go.
I don't think so. I love body pump at Good Life Gym. I love running.
But, okay.
I love cheese.
All right. Wow. I mean, can we get a little bit in more depth? You are, once again, now you are having a snippet into my life, everyone. Now you know where the kids get it. How was your day at school? Great. Oh my gosh. Could I get a little bit more layers into it? So tell us something that people would not know about Louise without putting yourself under the bus.
Okay, which I have done before, thanks to Chris Mack.
A few times.
Wonderful Chris Mack, who was on my show. I love basketball, and I think I've said this once on the show before, that I was determined, little Louise was determined to be the first woman in the NBA. This was before the WNBA even existed, which I think was founded in 1996. So when I was playing basketball, it didn't exist. That was the only option for girls, which was not even an option. Let's in my little Louise mind, it was an option, which once again speaks to sort of how my parents raised me. And so I thought the only way to get there was to be playing on boys' teams and to be playing with boys, because I was going to be playing eventually professionally with boys, men. But so I went to a particular camp. It was boys and girls camp for basketball, and I won the MVP for that camp.
Of course you did.
Of course I did. And I still have the running shoes that I won. I got these Reebok high tops, and I still have them in a really little box because I don't have many mementos from when I was growing up. I get rid of a lot of stuff, but I still have those shoes because they really represent something really special to me.
Okay.
Is that the kind of thing you were looking for?
Well, yes, I guess, sort of. I was just kind of more like maybe an experience, perhaps, that you had that kind of, it doesn't have to be doom and gloom situation, but something that people are like, so that's why Louise is the woman that she is today, type of thing. Like it influenced you in a very positive way, because we all have experiences, and not everyone, but a lot of people will always say, well, this bad thing happened in my life and I came out of it stronger, or it really altered me in a way. But the other side of the coin is you go through these positive things. You're like, it totally positively changed my life. And I believed in that. And now I believe in it stronger based on this experience. What experiences have you gone through? And we don't have to talk about little Louise. We could talk about adolescent Louise or early adult Louise. But what is an experience that stands out in your mind that really kind of altered things with you?
Yeah, so definitely growing up, there was not an event. It was a series of things that accumulated, and I don't think I need to go into that. But it was amazing. You've heard me say that if I could live my childhood over again exactly as it was, even with the little bumps, which certainly there were, I would do it. I would do that again. So no massive, just a bunch of really awesome stuff there. I would say as an adult, and this is going to be so cheesy now, so we've gone to like laying it on really thick and serious and talking about leadership and gender equity and research and brain stuff, to now going really sappy. So I would say, do you know what's coming? Probably now Jay does. And others who follow Jay and I regularly on social media will already know what's coming. And that was meeting you.
Oh, gosh.
It's true.
Please, for all the listeners out there who are just dying to find out. Anyways, go ahead.
It's true. It was meeting Jay, and the significance there was, so I grew up with, and still have, a wonderful dad who's a nuclear physicist. My mom's in the psychology area and social work area. But I was really leaning more into the science of it all. I took a degree in biology. I was with an engineer for 25 years as my partner. And so that was very much my life. And that when you and I met, I felt like I was open to a whole new world that changed the trajectory of how I live with my heart and the career path that I took.
Wow, that was not what I was expecting. I was expecting something different. So,
You were?
yeah, it was. No, that's good. Thumbs up. That was really good. I thought you were going to talk about when the world stopped or whatever.
Or maybe having kids. Whoops. The kids thing. The kids were really great.
Yeah. Children do alter your life, yes.
In a positive way, but it took a while for it to be a positive way. But we're like kind of at the top of the hour. Do you want to close my show for me today? Do you want to have the honor of closing?
You know what? Even though it was an honor to do this, I actually am going to let you, in classic Louise form, close out your show.
You'll let me close out my show. Well, I want to say, first of all, thank you to you for being completely put on the spot here and helping me flip the tables. I hope all of you, my wonderful, loyal listeners, have enjoyed hearing a little bit more insight into me, despite how serious we got at times. That's me. I really go all over. I go in and I go deep and I go with my whole heart in everything that I do. And I think that was probably displayed in our chats today.
It was fun.
So thank you. And thank you again to all of you who show up each and every week and offer your love and support for the show and for my guests. And I'd like to remind you that information about my show and all of my guests, this interview today, as well as prior interviews, can be found at louisehreed.com. You can also check out my YouTube channel, Louise H. Reed, and catch all of the videos in case you want to see some of the dialogue or facial expressions that have gone on with today's show. Finally, a big shout out to my producer, Cameron Steele at Contact Talk Radio Network. And finally, the quote that I've been leaving all of you with most recently, one of my favorites of the day or of the moment is, be bold enough to use your voice, brave enough to listen to your heart, and strong enough to live the life you've always imagined. Until next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, I'm Louise H. Reed, wishing all of you an amazing day. Goodbye, friends.